Detroit, Michigan's largest city, is struggling with a huge deficit, high crime, and high unemployment. It also faces the prospect of having its finances controlled by the state. Can the Motor City bounce back? Mayor Dave Bing says yes. He joins me now from our Detroit bureau. Mr. Mayor, welcome to Bottom Line. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Mayor Bing, Moody's Investors Service has downgraded more than $2.5 billion of Detroit's debt below investment grade. But you say that that downgrade was not unexpected. And the city does face a budget deficit approaching $270 million and could run out of cash by late April or early May. Does the downgrade tie your hands? Won't it be harder for the city to borrow money to meet its needs?
It will be a little more difficult. What it'll do is probably increase our interest costs. I think we'll still be able to borrow money, but at a much higher interest rate.
What type of interest rate are we talking about, sir?
You're probably talking a couple of points over prime at least.
Sir, in 5 days, you have a deadline for your financial review team to make a recommendation on whether you should put the city into receivership under an emergency manager. First off, what's your relationship with Governor Rick Snyder? He has proposed a consent agreement that would give you the powers of an emergency manager. Will you two be able to reach a compromise on this?
I am hopeful that we will reach a compromise. As a matter of fact, our two executive officers are now working together. We had a first meeting today, sit down across the table from each other, because we gave them a counter proposal to the proposal I got from him about 2 weeks ago. So I do believe that we'll be able to compromise and work something out so that an emergency manager does not have to come into the city of Detroit.
Mayor Bing, what's your relationship like with the governor?
My relationship is very professional. The governor came out of the business sector as I did. Both of us are at the first time in our terms as politicians. So I think we got a pretty decent relationship. We don't have issues with each other from a personal standpoint, but he has to do what he has to do because he has a fiduciary responsibility for the entire state, and I do with the city of Detroit. We may not be all the time on the same page, but what's good for Michigan, in a lot of cases, you know, Michigan goes through Detroit, so yes, we've got to work together.
Mayor Bing, for the past 20 years, Michigan has appointed emergency managers to run financially struggling cities and schools. Relatively little legal challenge during that time. But last year, Governor Snyder and the state legislature revised the law to give emergency managers power to strip authority from locally elected officials and to tear up union contracts. If no movement's being made on the local level in Detroit and the situation is dire, what's wrong with the state intervening and at least beginning a process that stalled at the local level?
Well, I think what you do is it's a voting right issue more than anything else. And the people here in the city of Detroit are very strong on their right to vote and have whoever they vote for lead the city. So I think that's not going to go away. I don't know all the legalities of it right now, but the fight will continue.
We're joined once again by Detroit Mayor Dave Bing. We had some audio problems, but Mr. Mayor, I understand those problems have been fixed. I was talking to you before we took the break about the possible state supervision of Detroit's finances, and it has given Michigan bonds a boost. They have rallied the most in 16 years, and investors seem to be betting on a comeback by the city of Detroit. Does that signal to you that investors are optimistic that outside intervention can put the city on the road to fiscal health faster than perhaps you and members of the council can?
Well, I think what we have to do is look at a partnership here. I don't think that anybody from the outside can come into Detroit with the problems that we have and understand the magnitude of them and try to manage their way through them. Detroit's been on a downward slide for the last 30 or 40 years, so it just didn't happen over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think now that this administration is in place, we have a firm understanding and handle on what needs to be done to bring the city back. But I'm not so naive to think that we can do it on an independent basis, so we have to have support from the state.
Mr. Mayor, the Detroit Free Press reported this week that you and members of the City Council want the state to approve a $135 million financial aid package that would provide immediate relief, in addition to changing legislation so the city can raise income and corporate taxes and to forgive the city's debt. If the state were to approve that financial aid package, should Governor Snyder have some say in how that money is spent?
I don't have a problem with the governor having some say. He should not have the total say in it because, once again, it still should rest with the elected officials. But I'm a team player, and I believe that if the governor comes to the table and they have skin in the game, they should have a lot of input relative to how we spend the money.
Sir, raising income and corporate taxes, how might that help? Would that, in fact, force more people to leave and more businesses to leave Detroit?
Well, you're talking about a nominal increase. You're talking about something to the tune of less than 1%. And I don't believe, based on what I see happening in Detroit right now, it's a market that's at the lowest point that it's ever been. So I think we got nowhere to go but up. And I think a lot of the corporate investments that are happening in Detroit now is the bet that the city will come back. We can't just cut our way out of it. We've got to make sure that we generate revenue for growth.
Mayor Bing, Detroit's unions, are they on board with this? Are they ready for givebacks?
Well, I've negotiated over the last 3 months with our largest 3 unions. That would be police, fire, and ASME, that represents almost 90% of our union employees. They have all signed tentative agreements at this point, generating about $100 million in cost savings and structural cost savings in the area of pension reform and in terms of health and health care. So there's another work rule changes that we've negotiated with our unions that potentially could save another $500,000 or maybe another $50 million. So I think we're working very well with labor.
We're speaking with Dave Bing, the mayor of Detroit. Mr. Mayor, Michigan's recession, it began before many other states because of that decline in the U.S. auto industry. The Center for Automotive Research in Ann Arbor says that the industry accounts for about 135,000 jobs in the state. How did the industry's bailout and weakened financial position hurt Detroit, and what has the resurgence meant for the city?
Well, the resurgence hasn't meant a lot to the city because most of the manufacturing and assembly plants are not in the city anymore. They're around the state of Michigan, but not in the city. The headquarters for General Motors is smack downtown. Ford is on the outskirts over in Dearborn, and Chrysler is in another suburb. So I think the area where we're getting some upswing would be from the supplier industry, because we do have a lot of suppliers in the city of Detroit. Right. And as the automotive industry begins to strengthen itself, then those people are starting to hire and invest.
Well, sir, even with that resurgence, the auto industry at this point, what we can see, it's been in a steady decline. It's downsizing, and that means the number of employees who commute to Detroit for work is down, meaning less money spent in the city at restaurants and for parking. How have you and the council been able to make up for that lost revenue?
Well, one of the things that we have is we have 3 major casinos in the city of Detroit. We have a healthcare industry that's booming. For the last 5 years, they have 10% growth on an annualized basis, and they project that they will continue to have double-digit growth for the foreseeable future. So we're not as dependent now on the automotive industry as we were historically. Right. So from a manufacturing standpoint, it's still our bread and butter, but we are bringing other industries to the city.
Mayor Bing, has Detroit been forgotten by the rest of the nation?
I don't know that we've been forgotten, but I don't think we've gotten the support that's necessary, because Detroit is an iconic city. This is where the middle class really developed itself, and I don't think that we can let Detroit go down the tubes. It's too important not only to the United States, but from a global standpoint. I don't care where you travel around the world, when people ask about where you're from and you say Detroit, they know about Detroit. They know about the car industry. They know about Motown. So we still got things that I think that we can market.
Sir, you're an NBA Hall of Famer. You spent most of your career with the Detroit Pistons. Let's use a basketball metaphor. Is the city of Detroit in the paint, or is it beyond the three-point line?
No, I think we are now moving down toward the paint because, once again, I think from a foundation and fundamental standpoint, I don't want to go and shoot three-pointers. What I want to do is stay down and make my layups first, make my free throws next, and before I go out to the three-point line.
Sir, then talk to me about the city of Detroit. What does it look like a year from now? What do you think the financial picture is going to look like?
I think there will be, without a doubt, an improvement. We are now starting to attract the 21 to 35-year-old educated person coming to Detroit. Detroit historically has been an African-American city. More than 80% of our residents are African-American. But what I'm seeing now is young white kids, young Asian kids, young Hispanic kids that are now starting to move into the city because they want the urban experience. And, you know, I think we've got a white sheet of paper for a lot of entrepreneurs to come in and take their ideas and mold them into companies that we've never heard of before.
All right, Dave Bing, the mayor of the great city of Detroit, joining us this afternoon. Mr. Mayor, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so very much.